Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursaleen, nabiyyina Muhammadi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. Amma ba'du, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to our fiqh hour, or as it is in one word, just to play on those words. Alhamdulillah, we have now completed a full week. The next week, obviously, it is Yomul Ahad, and therefore it is the beginning of the new week. And it's been some time since we discussed or started this whole session. This time last Sunday, alhamdulillah, was our first session. So I know we're hearing some positive comments from people with regards to the sessions generally, the service, inshallah. And I pray that long may it continue. Obviously, we want to provide this for as long as it is feasible, both from my perspective and also from the perspective of the viewers. Alhamdulillah, we've already had people on and already posing questions, mashallah. No messing about today. That's it. So I think we're getting used to the tartib and the order and the way things get done. Please do post your questions. But what I will do is just to clarify a couple of questions from yesterday. I did say I would confirm. One was the Hijrah date. I did say that the Hijrah date was set by Sayyidina Umar ibn Khattab several years into his Khilafah. And it was set on the Hijrah time of the Prophet ﷺ. Someone posed a question or raised a question for the answer that, oh, wasn't it based on the Niyyah? And I said, no, it was based on the Hijrah. But, you've put some element of doubt. I will go check that for you. And I have checked that. And that's come back as I had suggested. Similarly, the names of Adam ﷺ that he was taught by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when the angels wanted to understand the hikmah behind Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala creating this khalifa, creating this new creature that will reside upon the earth. And وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ أَسْمَاءَ when the names were taught to Adam alayhi salatu wasalam, وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا, all the names were taught. There was something interesting I found here in this tafsir, which I will share with you. آية تعليم آدم الأجناس التي خلقها الله. So like I said yesterday, it refers to all the jinns, all the different type of species of creation that would exist. Adam alayhi salam was taught it. وألهمه معرفة ذواتها وخواصها وصفاتها وأسمائها إما في آن واحد أو آنات متعددة, either in one moment or over several moments. Yeah, he was taught this. هذه الآية دالة على فضل العلم. However, this sheikh mentions that this ayat in particular is drawing reference to the excellence of ilm. This is the real maqsad of this. فإنه سبحانه وتعالى ما أظهر كمال حكمته في خلقه آدم عليه الصلاة والسلام. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to make apparent the excellence, the excellence of his hikmah, his wisdom in the creation of Adam alayhi salatu wasalam. What was the hikmah? What is this the beauty of this? Why would he do this? إلا بأن أظهر علمه, except that he would make apparent his ilm. Okay. فلو كان في الإمكان وجود شيء أشرف من العلم لكان من الواجب إظهار فضله بذلك الشيء. If there had been فلو كان في الإمكان any possibility of the existence of something else which is more honorable than knowledge, then that would have been wajib to make his excellence, yani Allah's excellence, apparent by that thing, not by knowledge. Meaning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to make apparent to him his apparent to angels and by extension mankind the excellence of his knowledge. So knowledge is a very virtuous thing that we should try to seek, and therefore this is what the Mufassir explains with regards to that ayat. So that just tied us up a couple of the comments from yesterday, which I did say that I would add more flesh to in the next day, and which I have done now. So let's carry on with some of the questions which have come onto here. Why is a woman allowed to stay in the same place as her husband after a falaq? Okay, talaq bayin kubra. Okay, talaq. I think I mistype. I think the question or the question is being posed that if there is no hope of getting back together, reconciliation, because obviously this is a talaq bayin kubra or talaq mughalaz as sometimes referred to, where there is no way back, because of the fact that he has to provide her nafaqa, he has to provide all this service to her whilst he is in his marriage. And therefore, as we've discussed so many times, society was set up in such a way that the male was the breadwinner. And when the lady was a young lady, or she was a girl, or she was unmarried, then she would stay with her father and her father would support her. And when her father would then find a suitable chap to marry her off to, then she would be married to him and he would provide that. Now, during her iddah, she cannot get married. So because she cannot get married, then who is responsible? Because there's no social setup, each individual took responsibility. Then who is responsible for providing for her whilst she is in these circumstances? And that's the reason why she would stay in the marital home, so that she would be provided for. And then when that period was over, where she can now remarry, because she cannot marry during her iddah. Once that period was over, even though isharatan people can offer their make offer to her, and she can isharatan give some indication that she's interested, not obviously tie the knot or anything or have any formal agreement, but just isharatan, then she could do that even during that time scale. And once that was over, she could then move and marry again, and her situation was looked after. What the Sharia is imparting is a support network for the vulnerable. That's what the Sharia was imparting, is a support network for the vulnerable. And a woman who's been divorced because she cannot remarry. Why? Because obviously one of the hikmah behind her remarrying, or not remarrying rather, is she could be carrying child. And if she's carrying child and she remarries almost immediately, and she has intimacy with this new husband, and then she bears and she gives birth, 8 months later or 7 months later or 9 months later, the question now comes is, who is the father? And there's a responsibility upon whoever the father is. And also there is a right for the child to know who his or her father is for inheritance purposes. So that's the kind of rationale behind why that is set up like that. Wa alaikum salam, Harun. So, wa alaikum salam. Please explain about the Lawhim Mahfuz. Please explain Allah's name An-Noor. Does the reciter send salam to the Prophet alayhi salam during Tashahhud? So, Lawhim Mahfuz. Okay, Lawh means a tablet. Mahfuz means something which is protected or preserved. So this is Lawhim Mahfuz is a preserved, protected tablet which exists with Allah, and from it scriptures are sent down onto the earth. So from it was the original, the Torah, the Injil, the Sahifas. Any revealed text which has come from Allah originates from the Lawh Mahfuz, this preserved tablet. So that is the origin of revelation, in a sense. That is the origin of divine text, divine scripture, divine guidance. So I hope that makes sense. Allah's name An-Noor. Well, An-Noor means the light, the one who brings light. So that's the meaning, and that's all I can share with you off the top of my head. Does the reciter send salam to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam during Tashahhud? Hold on, let me just send this. As you know, when it comes to TikTok, I can only send 10-minute recorded videos. I think you need a certain number of followers or something in order to be go live on TikTok. But hey, let's see what we generate over the next sort of few weeks, if we do generate that level of fellowship or followship. I don't know, whichever one it is, and then we'll see how that goes. So I hope that explains that. So when we say ashhadu wa la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah, then there is no need to say now sallallahu alaihi wasallam during that, because that is part of that. To send durood upon the Prophet ﷺ is not binding. It is not wajib to send it. It is encouraged upon us to send that durood upon the Prophet ﷺ. The ulama say that if you are in a majlis, then at least once you should say that. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that you send it once. It's not an absolute requirement to say every point and conjecture. Please explain Surah An-Noor ayah 35. I'll have to get back to you to that, because I'll have to find what Surah An-Noor ayat number 35 is. This is why I say, brothers and sisters, is that if you want me to prepare for something, then asking me on the spot, it's near impossible. This is near impossible. I'm trying my utmost to give you answers to, questions across a massive spectrum, aqidah, contemporary fiqh, tafsir, tashri' of hadith, whatever. But this head is only this big, so it can only contain a certain amount of information, and it most definitely cannot contain all that information behind me. So if you're going to ask me to check something that you think that is not going to be at the top of his head, then it's best if you send that beforehand, and then it gives me time to check it during the day, and then I can have an answer prepared. Whereas now, when I see this, I will have to get back to you tomorrow at the earliest, if I can remember. I have made a note, so please do bear that in mind. Think about me, that he's having to give us answers whilst he's just sat there. Assalamu alaikum. If you miss the first rak'ah in Maghrib Jama'ah, do you say that the tashahhud in the second rak'ah with the Imam, and in the third rak'ah, and again in the rak'ah that you make up? Yes. Because when you join, you've missed the first rak'ah, you've joined the second rak'ah. For you, it is in tilawat, it is your second rak'ah, but in rak'ah, it's your first. And then in your second one, you're sitting, because it is both your third rak'ah bit tilawa, but your second rak'ah bil amal, and then obviously in the third rak'ah is your final rak'ah. So you would have to sit. So arguably you sit in all three. And again, that's absolutely correct. Can a woman in her iddah on the death of her husband receive male guests in company of others for condolences? Well, this opens the whole thing about mahram. Now, the issue here is that walaikum salam. I was wondering where you were. Bit late. Some bits in the corner, please, whilst we carry on, the rest of us. So when it comes to a woman receiving guests, then a woman shouldn't receive guests anyway when she is alone, when her husband is absent, or she doesn't have a husband. And if women are coming to visit, apart from obviously her mahram, but if women are coming to visit her, then women can visit her. But if a male is going in with the women, then this is mixing, isn't it? Because say if other women come in afterwards, then this is problematic. So we have to avoid circumstances like that. So the same hukum that applies to the intermingling of the two genders would apply in these circumstances as well. Can one play mobile games where gambling is involved? I think you probably already know the answer to that, and that is that obviously gambling in any shape or form is impermissible, even if it is in a game. So, because it starts to instill those kind of habits into people of, gambling, and the excitement comes in, and then you start to go beyond that. So these type of games should be avoided. And we discussed, Harun, if you remember, about what kind of pastimes, shall we call them, or what time of preoccupations. Pastimes itself is not a good phrase, because you're trying to pass time. Time is something Allah has given you as a ni'mah, and you're saying, I want to just use this up because I don't really know what to do with it. That begs the question, how can you not know what to do with your time? SubhanAllah, you might have qadha salahs. Your recitation of the Quran might be weak. The last time you did a khatm al-Quran might be like 3 months ago. You still don't know how to read Arabic properly, classical Arabic, so you cannot access ilm. Your own understanding of basics of Islam is weak. Your aqidah is non-existent. You've not actually studied an aqidah course. Your understanding of tahara is weak. You do not understand properly, the menstrual cycles and when you should be praying, when you shouldn't be praying. You don't know the full rules of salah. So how can we be looking at pastimes when there's all that information out there which we need to understand and we've unfortunately are not engaging with? Yes, we are humans. We need to rest. We need to relax sometimes. But there's so many ways of resting and relaxing, catching up with friends, going out for something to eat, spending time with the family, getting involved in some kind of sport, which is a good form of exercise for you as well. So it maintains your body, maintains your fitness, keeps you strong. There has to be a gain for you in what you're doing, rather than just passing time because you're bored. And that this is problematic, because boredom is a serious problem from the perspective of your view of what Allah has given you as a ni'mah. Is everyone's future written in the Lawh Mahfuz? Not really, no. That's not something which is dedicated to that. This is more majority, but this is all written with Allah. Everyone's futures are already written. It mentions that the pens, the papers are already dry. The scrolls have already been written. So it is written. Absolutely, everyone's future is well aware. We remember the conversation which takes place between, or the debate which takes place between Adam alayhi salatu wasalam and Musa alayhi salatu wasalam with regards to predestination, and how Musa alayhi salatu wasalam is a little bit upset at the fact that Adam alayhi salatu wasalam's actions were the cause for humans to be exiled from Jannah. But when Adam alayhi salam explains to him to say that, you agree that the Torah was written well before I was created, and obviously Musa alayhi salam agrees, and he says, do you find in the Torah that I will consume that type of whatever it was? Some say it was a type of crop. Some Mufassirun say it was a type of fruit that I was forbidden to consume. And I did. And obviously Musa alayhi salam says, yep. So then he goes, how can you hold me to task for something which was written in the book prior to my being sent upon the earth? Or prophet. So yes, but that's now become a ritual act within our salah. This is again, I mentioned yesterday when I talked about certain ritual acts which existed at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, which there was a maqsad behind them. For instance, the lowering of the garment off the shoulder to show strength, and numerous others which were there for that reason. The inaudible recitation in the Dhuhr and the Asr Salah, and the audible recitation in Maghrib, Isha and Fajr, and what the rationale for it was. But now, obviously, even though that rationale may not exist anymore, the maqsad, because it's now become a ritual act, that will continue. A follow-up to my earlier question on talaq: aren't the former spouse now ghair mahram to each other, thus not allowed proper khalwa? How do they manage that in one dwelling? They are, but they can manage that in one dwelling, very similar to how we manage that in one dwelling if, for example, you're living with your brother and his wife. So for, in majority of our societies, you tend to find that we live in large families. Apart from now, those of us who are getting established more and more in the West, where as soon as we get married, we move out. That's not always the case. Most of us, when we have got married, we've stayed with parents, either short term or even long term, until the house has got, we've started to have children. Let me just send this up. Children, and then we might decide to move out. So there is etiquette to understand that, when our sister-in-law, she may, remove her headscarf and her jilbab when she's with her husband in their own bedroom. But when she comes out of the bedroom and she's moving around the house, she may wear a headscarf and a jilbab. Now, she may choose not to wear a niqab because it might be too difficult for her to move around the house quite freely with a niqab on. Now, that does not mean that the brother-in-law is continuously looking at his sister-in-law, because he knows that she normally practices the niqab, but because obviously we all live in a house together and she's got to move around the house all day, it's going to be too difficult for her. So obviously the gent lowers his gaze. Similarly, when it comes to living together, then there's etiquettes of living together. We have certain areas where we shouldn't loiter around. So, for example, if there is only one bathroom, then really loitering around outside the bathroom is not good etiquettes, because if our sister-in-law is going to be moving around, then that's going to make her feel very uncomfortable. So, it's only in sort of, shared areas of the house that we may be a little bit more relaxed. But we know, generally speaking, the women tend to use the house more as a social setting, as a place where they live, as a place where they stay, as a place where they work. Whereas for gents, they only need, I guess, a place where they need to consume food. And if and when they get guests, they can obviously take those guests. So, it's about etiquette. So it's not always going to be the case that, when we live, it's only that in the case of talaq, where, there might be an issue of not having proper khalwa. But if they're a married couple, then that married couple are obviously living in a circumstances where they'll have more than one room. So it's a case of splitting the room up. And again, they may have children or whatever. So this is the hukam. But if it comes to be too difficult, then obviously, that person will look at those circumstances and say, look, this is not going to work. Whatever, there's a chance of committing sin, or the husband is an abusive man, or the wife is an abusive woman. There's some underlying issue which will mean that they can't live together, and as a result, because they can't live together, they need to maybe live separately. So all these things, remember, whenever we speak about, and I had this long conversation a few days back, that whenever the ulama speak, they're giving general rulings in general circumstances. But then there are specific rulings in specific circumstances. But they will not make a habit, or they shouldn't rather, make a habit of discussing specific rulings. Why? Because then somebody picks that up thinking, oh, okay, I think my circumstances merit this particular ruling. And now they become the person who's deciding. And as we know, unfortunately, we are weak people. So naturally, it's going to be our ego and our shahwat, our desires, our hawa, that's going to decide that, not really a jurisprudic reason why we're going to decide that. Always nice to have you, Umar. Hope your family is well. Ameen. Salam Iqbal, I think, from Sheffield, if I remember your name well. What's the ruling on vaping and also setting up shops for the sale of vapes? Vapes, to me, in my understanding, as I've understood from the science that's out there currently on vaping, is not too dissimilar to smoking. So on smoking, there's a big debate as to, is smoking, what is the hukam of smoking? Now, the hukam of smoking, because of the additives, because there is a historic engagement, even from Muslims historically, with tobacco. So there is some historical engagement with tobacco, because we find, for example, that there's numerous things which, if we consume, okay, excessively, it can be problematic. For example, if we take too much salt, it's problematic. If we take too much sugar, it's problematic. If we consume too much foods which have cholesterol on it, it's problematic. So you find that there's lots of things which are damaging to our health. So tobacco, as it was back in the day, is damaging, but wasn't as damaging, say, as it is now. Because now there's lots of additives put in. It's big business. Okay, it's absolutely huge business. Like I was reading the other day that the beef and the poultry market is big business. So there's lots of people who make money out of the people being meat eaters. They make huge money, and being poultry eaters, and rather than being, say, plant eaters. And similarly, there's lots of money now being made from cigarettes, or has been from cigarettes for a long time. So now there's additives there, things which make it addictive. So you always want a cigarette. There's also, obviously, without doubt, carcinogens. There are things which gonna, bring about a shorter life. So this thing, vaping, is no different to that. There's no different to that. In fact, there's less research with vaping, so there's even a higher risk. And when we look at things of this nature, like what is the person doing it for? Is this person doing this for nourishment purposes? What is the actual, underlying issue there? So, these are things that should be avoided. Can you enlighten if communal obligations need to be highlighted and provided for in areas where there is a need in facilitating for people with minor or extreme disabilities like deaf, blind? Also, we have kids with SEN from minor to major autism spectrum with their learning needs to be arranged accordingly. Hence, imams need to educate themselves on how to deal with it. Yeah, obviously, wherever it comes to imparting knowledge, then our institutes should not be places which obviously refuse children who have these learning, either physical impairments to learning or some other means of learning difficulties. They should provide facilities. Having said that, it is a specialism. So it shouldn't be that every masjid, for example, or every institute has that capacity, because it depends on the level of training that's required. As you know, unfortunately, and I'm glad, Sheffield Guidance Hub has raised this, is everybody thinks that madrasas and masjids, the people who run them are responsible. The thing we have to look at is madrasas and masjids are communal projects. A masjid is a communal project. So if you are paying, and I say you, as in the people who go to a masjid, if you, and because the committees come from you, are paying your masjid £6 an hour, £7 an hour, or if you're paying your maktab teacher £6 an hour or £7 an hour, then you should ask yourself, why? And if you're paying your masjid imam or maktab imam £10 an hour, or just the minimum wage, again, you've got to ask yourself, why? If this person has to have all these specialisms, where we expect him to be an orator, where we expect him to be a social worker, where we expect him to be a marriage counselor, where we expect him to be a faqih, where we expect him to be a qualified teacher, where we expect him to, lead janaza, where we expect him to counsel us at the time of loss, and yet he is paid less than an 18-year-old who packs shelves at the local supermarket, who all we expect from him is to pack a shelf, then something is wrong, isn't it? Something is wrong in our society. The wheels have come off somewhere. What's happening? Why is that happening? How can that be happening? It's understandable if that happened, back in the 1950s and 60s and 70s when we first arrived, and I guess, money was tight for everybody. But now we're living in 2024, for crying out loud. Should that still be the case? And you're getting a lot of brain drain now. What's happening is many of the bright young people who even graduating from the Darul Ulooms do not want to take up an imam's position. They do not want to take up a maktab teacher's position. Rather, they would go to uni and do something else and qualify in another profession. So there is a big issue. So I 100% support the direction and of the question of supporting all individuals. 100%. Our communal masajids or madaris should provide that support. But our communal masajis and madaris also need to be supported, because they can only support the community when the community has supported them. I've noticed over the years, there's this separation between the masjid and the madrasa and the community, when the masjid and the madrasa was set up by the community. So it leaves you scratching your head thinking, the community set this up, but now they don't want to support it. Well, who is going to support it? Who is going to bring the income to support it? It's a communal project. So, this is I would like to, give those of you, mashallah, I'm sure you are, those who are in the position of being community people, which I'm sure you all are up and down the country, then, lend that support. Why is it that if you go to our wudu areas, you don't feel, apart from those masjids, alhamdulillah, which I've been fortunate to go into. Okay. Sorry, just jump. Oh, look at that. You're getting double vision of me. Hold on. Right. So until you go to our wudu areas, and do you really feel comfortable? That does it smell nice? Is it clean? You go to our toilets in the masjid. Is it suitable? It's a public toilet. Would you expect that in a supermarket mall? Would you expect that at an airport? Would you expect that at a restaurant? Why we expect it? Why accepting? Rather, did I say accepting? Expecting. Why are we accepting it in a masjid? And again, let's not turn on the masjid, because the masjid is a communal building. It's the community that set that up. Nobody came from outside the community and set that up. So therefore, it's the community's job. So we need to sit with the trustees or whoever the governing body is and say, why is it that our toilets and they might say to you, oh, we can't afford to get a staff member, so just get volunteers. Why can't we get a staff member? We don't have enough income. Okay, so because you don't have enough income, you can't pay someone to clean the toilet, so you got to rely on volunteers, and obviously volunteers will do it as and when they please. Yeah, that's exactly the reason. Okay, thanks. At least you know now. At least you know. So I think these are important conversations that we need to have. But yes, going back to the specific point, absolutely, these young people, whatever their so-called disabilities are, or whatever their learning difficulties are, they are part of the community, and therefore they should not be felt to feel as though they're not part of the community. But as I've said, the underlying issues need to be addressed. Salam. So it's better, as I said before, assalamu alaikum, because salam doesn't mean anything. Okay, I know it's in the English thing now to just say salam, but it should be assalamu alaikum, and then the response to that would be wa alaikum salam. If I hit a car and the other person is not insured on that car and not the owner, so the insurance does not pay out, owner, should I still pay damage I caused? Yes. When it comes to damaging somebody's car, insurance is only a legal requirement in this country, because unfortunately, when people cause damage to other people, they drive off or they run off, and then this poor person's got a damaged car, nobody repairs it. And insurance is now, it's a little bit of a scam. I've been insured with the same insurance company for 12 years. And the last few years, my insurance keeps going up. But they, and I'm sort of shocked because I've got like 26 years of no claims bonus. I've been with the same insurance company, like I said, for 12 years. So to this last time around, they sent it before in middle of December, and it's basically doubled. So I'm sort of thinking, why is my insurance doubled? So I rang them up and I told them. So insurance, unfortunately, it's one of them things where you're basically, it's a way that people are just taking money from you. So originally, before the whole concept of insurance was, if you hit somebody's car, you paid them. In some countries, that is still the case. You hit somebody's car, you pay them the damages you've caused to the car. Whether they're insured or not is irrelevant. You're not the law. You're not here to establish the law. That is the police and the legal system to say that he should be applying the law. If you want to ring up the police to say that this person is insured, that's completely up to you. That's your choice whether you choose to do that, so that this person doesn't impact other people. Because if he crashes into somebody else and he decides not to pay because he's not going to look into it, then obviously that's going to be a concern for this other person. But yes, whether that person's insured or not is to a certain extent irrelevant. If you damage, that's the same thing. If you damage somebody's wall, you're reversing your car, you hit somebody's wall, you knock their wall down a little bit or dent it, you just don't drive off, you're responsible. You cause damage to that person's property. You don't fix it in the dunya. In the akhirah, everything will be disclosed. And when it's disclosed, you'll be expected to pay for it. The only problem in the akhirah is you don't have money. In the akhirah, all you have is your good deeds. So what happens when you've done something to somebody and you've not fixed it? Then they will ask from you your good deeds. So they will ask for salahs from you, they will ask fasts from you, they will ask zakat from you, they will get all sorts from you. And if you don't have any more good deeds left, then they will take, they will place their sins onto you. They will place their sins onto you. So make sure, and this is one of the things I really, really am concerned about, is the rights of people. It should be of a high concern point for you that it is, somebody's right that you've not fulfilled. That becomes a point of problem for you in the future. If one travels from A to B and it is 20 miles as the crow flies, but travels another route which is quicker, that is 55 miles, will they be Musafi when they reach B, yes. Because it is not necessarily the distance that a crow flies, unless you are a crow, but it is the distance that you have traveled. So yes, if that distance you have traveled is that distance, then it will be considered as a musafir. The distance this goes back to is 3 days travel. 3 days travel by camel or by foot, and that's where this figure comes from. And then it's been converted to the distance that was in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, the marahil and the marhal, and then that was converted into Arab meals and obviously English or European miles. Okay. Shouldn't all our places of worship in non-Muslim lands be designated a musalla rather than a masjid to avoid future sacrilege? It's a very good point, mashallah. Very good point. Very good point. We can't go back and change what's already happened. But in reality, that's probably moving forward. That is what should happen. That's right. In reality, moving forward, that's what should happen. Only problem with that is, Suleiman, is that can you do i'tikaf then in a musalla rather than a masjid? Can you, the 5 daily prayers, are you going to get the same reward? And so many other technicalities come into it. Is Jummah Salah valid then? So many issues come up with it, but I do agree. And I think it's not just a case of sacrilege in the future, in the sense, whether we're here or not. But I am telling you, at the moment, there is an implosion of masajids, or explosion rather, not implosion. There's an explosion of masajids, meaning that there's more and more masjids building, and the more our community moves out, the more there will be. But it will be, and I don't want to be a prophet of doom, is there will be a time when it will start to go the other way. Christianity, remember, is 600 years ahead of us along the chronological order, and you will find churches that are empty, and you will find churches that are actually abandoned. In fact, there is a particular charity, I was reading about this recently as well, whose job it is to revive abandoned churches. But even they do a financial exercise, a financial deduction to determine whether there's any value in reviving churches. But there's churches, and we know ourselves, masjids being converted to churches. There are so many churches that have been closed. I think there's a figure someone shared with me. I don't know if there was actually a factually sound, but there was a figure shared with me that on a weekly basis, that number of churches are closing. And that's a reality. In fact, in the last census, first time ever since the census started in the UK, Christianity was less than 50%. This is the first time ever. We cannot now say that England is a Christian country. We can no longer say that. In fact, what you would say now is that England is an atheist country, because the percentage that are atheists are highest percent group of people. If you add all the faiths, then I guess you'll find that the people of faith are close to 50%. But if you say which one group is the biggest, then those who profess no faith is the biggest group. And that's the first time ever in the history of the census when England, as we know, especially when you see the cross on the flag, is established. St. George's cross is absolutely defined as a Christian country. It no longer is. So therefore, it's a very valid point there about should there be musallas rather than being considered as masjids, because there will be, I don't doubt that, sacrileges in the future, not because of non-Muslim dominance or something, but because Muslims will abandon. You look at it yourself now. Think of the the level of Islam, if for want of a better phrase, in your parents. Think of it in your generation. Think of it in your children's generation, and then think of it in your grandchildren's generation. The more we are assimilating in the wider society, the less religious we are. And that's a fact. So, those of you who frequent masjids, let me just send this. You go to out, for example, other things. So those of us who frequent masjids we'll see that the masjids are pretty much empty. In outside of Jama'ah, a saf, maybe two safs at best. And the costs are quite high. Buildings are quite big. Even though they're excused from business rates, they still have the gas, the electric, and all the rest of it. So we see, and people are becoming less generous in the sense of supporting masjids because that connection is breaking. And add to that the fact that we undervalue the people who are in the masjid, the teachers, the ulama. And therefore, whereas a person who struggled to speak English and came from another country would gladly accept £7, £8 an hour, when you're being born and raised in this country, you're not gonna accept those terms, because you can get better terms packing a shelf, unless you're going to make that sacrifice. So, we as a community, and I keep saying as a community, let's not point the finger at the ulama. We as a community, the ulama are just a part of our community. We as a community need to think about the longevity of the religious facilities that surround us and how we can support that. Okay. What is the ruling on selling vapes? Ooh, subhanallah. So there's many different views that have been adopted with regards to those people who sell cigarettes or sell vapes. The minimum ruling that's given is makruh tahrimi, meaning that dislike which is close to haram. Other ulama have said it is haram. So in either case, it should be abandoned. This is not the way you want to make your livelihood. This is not the way you want to bring money home and feed yourself and feed your children. So it should be abandoned. Especially when there's so many other things a person can do. If we were restricted, that's the only job that was available, then it's understandable. But there's so many other occupations that's available. If a late fee charge was emailed to a class saying they need to pay £5 if they come into class late, do students need to pay this if this email was sent after a couple of lessons had already taken place? Well, you cannot charge penalties. There's a whole debate about whether you can charge financial penalties anyway, but let's park that up. But you cannot charge a penalty after the event. So you cannot say on Wednesday that as of Monday that's just gone, anybody who's late to class will pay that. So you cannot do that because you haven't been given sufficient notice for you to understand that ruling in order to take the necessary action in not being late. But if the institute that you're going to says you either give this on or we're going to exclude you, then what choice have you got there? Not everybody lives by Islamic rulings. Not everybody, even Muslims don't live by Islamic rulings, never mind non-Muslims. So therefore, many people will say, well, that's what it is, and if you're not going to pay it, goodbye. So then we're going to start debating from a fiqh basis that, oh no, masala wise you can't do this. To a certain extent it's academic, isn't it? There was a question that I needed to get from that was sent on the Markaz al-Ifta wal-Qadha group, and that was a person asked the question with regards to Suleiman, I'm sure you are on the Markaz al-Ifta wal-Qadha group. Could you post that question that somebody asked yesterday with regards to that game where they have that machine which goes and you pick up something and then it drops it off? It's on the Markaz al-Ifta. Okay, Harun, please, if you could do that. It was posted yesterday. Please just post it on here on the chat, because I forgot to send it onto my WhatsApp, so I cannot see on here, inshallah. I will get, because I need to answer that, because that was asked yesterday. Selling sweets, etc., to raise money for the masjid, does the buyer get reward of giving money to the masjid or not, because they get the sweets in return and only the seller gets the reward? Very good point there, sister. Very good point. Yeah, people do this. So the question which comes up is, who gets the reward? Well, obviously, if the person themselves has bought sweets, they bring it to the masjid, the money they raise from the selling of the sweets, they now give to the masjid, then you're right. The person who bought the sweets, sold the sweets, and gave the income to the masjid is going to get the ajr. Having said that, the person who's actually buying the sweets If he made intention that I can buy these sweets from that shop down the road, and I can buy these sweets from the masjid fair, and chooses to go to the masjid fair to buy the sweets, knowing that the money is going towards the masjid, then they will get ajr for it. They will get ajr for it. What I always say is, when people do these kind of events, is say, this is the minimum price, but we will take any price above this. So don't set a price for the sweets. Just say the minimum price on the sweets is, £1. So now the person knows that if I give £1, that's actually just for the sweets. So because they don't know how the Musalla works, so they don't know. They think by buying the sweets they're getting reward. That's not their fault that we have not explained it. And when they see you working in a masjid, they assume that you are a scholar. Okay. Break it into little bits or something, then maybe post it, Harun, onto your notes or something, and then split it in little bits, if you wouldn't mind. So put it. Okay, yeah, send it on Facebook. Good idea. I got Facebook here, or Twitter. Very good. If not, just break into bits and send it on here, inshallah. So it's up to the masjid organizers that are doing this event to say, these sweets cost £1. Therefore, if you spend £1, you will get the sweet. If you want to support our project, then please give more than £1, something like that. Okay, I know it sounds a bit long, but if there's a little message there at the front of the table or the counter, then at least people you're teaching as well at the same time, they will think, okay, if I only give £1, then I'm just getting the sweets and I'm not getting full reward. I'm here to gain some reward, so I'm not going to give £1. I'm going to give a £5. And they give a £5. Now £4 has gone towards the masjid. £1 has obviously gone to purchase the sweets, and that's a transaction. That's a transaction. Sadaqah, if sadaqah, remember, is where you get nothing in return. Sadaqah is when you get nothing in return. You cannot think you have given sadaqah if you go to one of these masjid fairs and you buy things from there. You are not giving sadaqah. You are buying, samosas. You're buying pakoras. You're buying chips. You're buying pizza slices. You're buying food for your money. Unless the organization can say that, this, we would normally sell this for 60p. Anything above this, will help the masjid. So now that person might give you £1. So 40p is the sadaqah and 60p is the pizza slice or whatever. Can you buy a former church to convert to a dwelling or for some other purpose? Yeah, you can buy churches to convert them into a masjid. There is easy to. Nowadays, I think there is a less chance of you doing that because obviously the regulations have changed. Many people aren't too happy because, unfortunately, the way we run masjids is it becomes a nuisance for the local community, and churches are usually built around, or were built around, Christian communities. So you'll find that there is still a non-Muslim element, and also people who want to use that area. So what we have a habit, unfortunately, of doing is then parking double, triple time. So now you'll find the councils are very careful in giving permission to people, and usually churches don't have big car parks. Reason being is, obviously, churches were built several, 200, 300, 400 years ago in some cases, and people didn't have cars then. People would walk to the church. It would be like a Sunday thing to walk to the church. And even if they go by horse, then they would, park the horse outside. They wouldn't bring the horse into the thing as well. It's like, going to my local cemetery. Now, my local cemetery has got a small car park at the bottom of the cemetery, but nobody parks in the cemetery. Everybody drives right up to the graves. So it's khilaf of adab to drive right up to the graves. And then they start double parking on either side. And now, somebody who is driving can't, somebody's got a problem with their legs. They can't drive past because all the roads are blocked. So, it's this kind of thinking that we have, where it's just about, I don't want to get wet, so I'm going to, go all the way across there. That we need to be careful about. It's common for women on menses and postnatal bleeding to go to the masjid for ta'ziyat. Is that allowed? No, it's not. You've got to bear in mind where ta'ziyat takes place. Even though ta'ziyat takes place around the mosque, it might not be in the masjid. Okay, so there are numerous places, numerous masjids that have outbuildings or Or let me just send this. Like going into a shop. So there's numerous there's numerous masjids that will have rooms in the building of the masjid. That's not part of the masjid. Many of us think when we see the building of the masjid that that's the masjid. It's not. Where you take your shoes off is not the masjid. Where you go to the toilet is not the masjid. Where you go to make wudu is not the masjid. Sometimes even the back room is not the masjid where you hang your coats up. Sometimes you will go through certain doors and the masjid is like just one open hall. That's just the masjid. So don't get confused to think the masjid is the physical building. No, the masjid is that piece of land which has been dedicated solely for prayer. And that's not the place where you take your shoes off. That's not the place where you make wudu. That's not the place where you go to the toilet. Might not even be the place where you hang your coats up. It might just be one room and where the minbar is, and that is just the masjid. Then anything below that is the masjid, and anything above that is the masjid. So it might be that they might have rooms alongside the masjid hall that people do for ta'ziyat. Those rooms do not have the same hukum as a masjid. Only the masjid has the same hukum as the masjid. I mean, if the class is still ongoing, but they put the late charge after a couple of lessons, can students not pay, or do they have to? Well, what I'm saying is, how can you not pay? It's not my institute. If you don't pay, what if they ask you to go? What if they ask you to leave? My point is that they're the ones who will enforce it. So if they say, okay, we let you off, then they can say, okay, we let you off. But if they say, no, thanks, you're either paying or we're going to expel you, then they'll expel you. You can't then say, oh, well, Mufti Amjad said you can't expel me. They'll say, who's Mufti Amjad? So, this is your conversation with the organization that you are attending their classes. They make the rules. Now, if they're saying, oh, let's ask Mufti Amjad, then that's up to them to do that. They might be asking some ulama themselves, or it might be a non-Muslim organization. I can only go by what you've shared with us. Okay, Harun. So this is it. In some shopping areas, there is a game which has a few things like balls, dolls, etc. inside glass containers, and there is a crane inside the container to pick these things, which is operated by a stick. Where's it gone? Stick. Outside to move the crane and pick the item inside. To play this, one has to pay some money and try to pick them inside and put in a specific area so it comes out to collect. So it involves paying money, crane moving, and targeting skills. If the item inside to be picked is halal, will it be halal to play this and possibly to acquire the item? Okay, so in this case, the best way to draw a distinction between what is gambling and what is a skilled performance is whether there is an element of skill in there. So if you've got a die is singular for dice. Dice is actually plural. If you've got a die and you throw a die, it is a random act. If you have a coin and you flick a coin, it is a random act. If I say I put £5 down and I say the next one is going to be a heads, that's gambling. I'm not saying that I've got a skill which will always bring heads up. What kind of a skill is that? It's equal. It's a 50-50 chance, 50-50 probability of head coming up or tails coming up. Okay. Secondly, when it comes to a die and I throw a die, I can't predict whether 5 is going to come up or 6 is going to come up. That's why when you go, these casinos, it's gambling, whether they have the spinning wheel, throw the ball, that ball could fall in either red or black or any number. It's chance. Okay. Similarly, when they throw die, it's chance. All these are to do with chance. And whenever there's chance and you're gambling, then it's impermissible to do that. In this case, there is an element of skill. Okay, where you are controlling this crane and then the crane is dropping down. It's a bit like, for example, when you go to a fair and they give you a gun and you got to shoot down some bottles, and if you shoot 6 down, they'll give you a teddy bear as a winner. Okay, that's when you get these kind of items, then it's a skill, and if it's a skill, it's permissible. If it is chance or gambling, then it's impermissible. Now we're short of time, so we're just going to take these next few. So please don't add any more questions. Save them, inshallah. We will be here tomorrow, inshallah. Same time, same place. So I don't want to offend you by not answering your question. So where we've got the last Sheffield one, let's leave it at that. What is Taziyat? Taziyat is, as I can see, Suleiman's and responded. Taziyat is to go to the person and console them and encourage them and strengthen them and support them and offer your help. That's what it really is. Okay? To help them, to support them, not to go there and say, Jama'ah dua karji, Jama'ah dua karji, you know, that's not what you're going there for. You're not going there to have your name ticked off a register. It's none of that. You are going there because you're going to go support this person. Is there anything I could do around your house? Do you want me to take out your rubbish? Is there anything else? You know, have you sorted your paperwork out? Don't worry, these things happen. You know, khair, alhamdulillah, you know, she died a good way or he died a good way. You know, you're giving them consolation, you're giving them confidence, you're giving them encouragement, you're giving them that this is part of life, brother. This is part of life, sister. You know, no one is going to live forever. We're all going to go one day, you know. But he was a good person. She was a good person. Regularly prayed salah. Used to give sadaqah. You know, all this kind of thing. So that's what our maqsad is. But it's turned into like a social gathering. You know, the conversations which take place, the gupshup which takes place, the laughter which takes place, and then there's kanashan as well now. So people are going up to eat. So it's turned into a walima. This poor person is crying because he's lost his father and his mother, and people are eating upstairs, laughing, giggling, talking about old times, whatever. This was never the reason for Taziyat. But unfortunately, you know, we've lost our way a little bit. I just wanted to ask you if you come across a textbook. It's called Wasiya of Imam Abu Hanifa to one of his students. I think his name was Dawood. Book is my eyes aren't too good. Book is Naduha to student when they finish studying. How to interact with people and lead by example and teach. There is another book, Al-Wasiya, dealing with Aqidah of Imam Hanifa. I'm not talking about that. It doesn't ring a bell, but Iqbal, I do forget things. So I will make a note of that and I'll see if I can find anything on that, a Wasiya about giving guidance to student for the future. I have, alhamdulillah, been very fortunate. I've read a lot of books. Yeah, I thought so. Naduha, yeah, Nasiha, that makes sense. I've read a lot of books, alhamdulillah, and I've read quite a few of these kind of, you know, advice to students. Some that have been translated into English as well, but I cannot recall whether it was one by Imam Hanifa. But if I get a chance, I will look at that, inshallah. Yep, Taziyat is done. Also, do you know of any classical text that deals with the subject for graduates of Islamic studies, how to apply and deal with people? As I said, I have come across a few advice to students books of that nature, some which have been translated into English, some like in Urdu, and some obviously in their original Arabic. If I do, you know, whilst I'm looking, come across something, then inshallah tomorrow I will share them, inshallah, all being well. Just asking, as I've not heard and I've asked on this not come across. As I said, inshallah I will. Barakallah Fiq, yes. It's unfortunately that we've kind of lost our way a little bit. Anyway, last point with Nasiha, Barakallah Fiq, Jazakum khair. 1 minute over 8 o'clock again, subhanallah. You know, I pray Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes overlooks our faults, gives us success in understanding his deen, and gives us success in following the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam, and being a people of bringing happiness to our Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, not ones who will add misery to him. I mean, Suleiman has answered there. Abu Ghudda's is an excellent book. I can't see it. There's a heart there or something. I don't know why. Why do they have this heart here? Look, a little heart. What does this heart do? Oh, okay. I can send hearts. I see. Why would I want to send hearts? Why would the person who's presenting want to send hearts? I don't understand that. Anyway, khair. I sent somebody a heart. I don't know who I sent a heart to. Did I send a heart to everybody or just to one person? Okay, now it's continuously sending hearts. What's going on? I need to stop sending hearts. Okay, let me press that. There you go. Send a few celebrations. Anyway, 2 minutes over. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
talking to the shopkeeper.
Hey, doesn't stop, does it?